Welcome to another module of research methodology. Here I am going to present the topic non-probability sampling or non-random sampling under the methods of sampling. What is non-probability sampling or non-random sampling? Non-probability sampling is a sampling method in which the researcher selects samples based on the subjective judgment of the researcher. Here the samples are selected based on the subjective judgment of the researcher rather than random selection. It is a sampling method in which not all members of the population have an equal chance of being selected. In random sampling, all the members of the population have an equal chance of selection. But here there is no such a chance. Then there is no specific system for the selection of sample. The selection depends upon the situation or expertise of the researcher. There is no specific system or methodology for the selection of sample. The selection of sample depends upon the situation or the subjective judgment of the researcher. It is widely used in qualitative research and exploratory studies. It is also used in social science research where it is impossible to draw random sample or probability sampling. Non-probability sampling methods consist of convenient sampling, also called accidental sampling, then purposive sampling, also called judgment sampling, then quota sampling, snowball sampling, and consecutive or total enumerative sampling. Let me start from convenient sampling. Convenient sampling, also called accidental sampling. This sampling means selecting sampling units which are conveniently and readily available. So in this method, the sampling units are selected from convenient locations. The selection is based on relative ease of access. Respondents are selected because they happen to be in the right place at the right time. It is best suitable for exploratory research. For example, conduct survey on shopping behavior at a nearest shopping mall early in morning on a given day. People visited that mall on that time is only included in the sample. So in convenient sampling, we are selecting sampling units from convenient locations on the basis of ease of access. Advantages of convenient sampling. It is the cheapest and simplest method. It does not require a list of population or sampling frame. It does not require any statistical expertise. We can select sampling units from convenient locations. No statistical expertise is required. Disadvantages. It is highly biased because of the researcher's subjectivity. Samples are selected based on the subjective judgment of the researcher. So there are chances of bias. It does not yield a representative sample. Only random sampling can give you a representative sample. It is the least reliable sampling method. Then the findings cannot be generalized into another situations. The second method of non-probability sampling is purposive sampling or judgment sampling. This involves selection of cases which the researcher judge as the most appropriate ones for the given study. Here the sampling units are selected by the researcher as he thinks the most appropriate. Samples are selected for a specific purpose with a predetermined basis of selection. That means the researcher will fix the characteristics of the population to be included as sample. Then investigator picks up only those sample which is relevant and possess the required characteristics which is determined earlier. It is based on the judgment of the researcher or some experts. Example, the researcher want to study about beggars. He purposefully selects some areas, bus stand, mosque, temple, train, etc. to include all types of beggars in the sample. Advantages of judgment sampling. First one, it is less costly and more convenient. then it guarantees inclusion of relevant elements in the sample because the sampling units are selected based on a well determined frame formulated by the researcher. Then disadvantages: this does not ensure the representativeness of the sample. This is less efficient for generalizing when compared with the random sampling. This sampling does not satisfy the underlying assumption of randomness. The next method of non-probability sampling is quota sampling. It is a sampling method in which the selection of the sample is made by the interviewer or enumerator who has been given specific subgroups of the population called quotas. Here the interviewers or enumerators may be appointed for sampling or to collect data. Then the total population may be classified into specific subgroups on the basis of certain characteristics. These subgroups are called quotas. Then one or two quota may be assigned to each interviewer or enumerator. Then these subgroups or quota may be formed by certain characteristics or traits such as sex, age, social class, etc. The interviewer is instructed to collect data from an assigned quota. The decision regarding the sample is to be selected in each quota are left to the interviewer's choice. That means the interviewer or enumerator will decide which items of the population is to be selected as sample. Then it is more popular in market surveys and public opinion polls. An example of quota sampling: an interviewer may be instructed to collect data from 50 females between the age of 30 and 45. Here the population is classified into subgroups on the basis of gender and age. So the quota given to the interviewer is females between the age of 30 and 45. The interviewer can then select at his own discretion any 20 females of that area who are in between 30 and 45 years of age. Another interviewer may be told to sample 50 males between the age of 30 and 45. Here the quota assigned to the interviewer is male between the age of 30 and 45. These type of subgroups or quotas were assigned to each interviewer to ensure sufficient number of representation from all subgroups. Advantages of quota sampling: it is less costly. It is most suited in a situation where the fieldwork has to be done quickly. Representation from all subgroups can be ensured. Disadvantages: it does not meet the basic requirement of randomness. It may not provide a representative sample. Chance for personal bias is very high. Snowball sampling is the next method of non-probability sampling. This method of sampling is often used to reach population which is difficult to find out. So this method is used when our population members are scattered and it is very difficult to identify and locate them. In this case, we initially contact a few potential respondents and then ask them whether they know of anybody with the same characteristics that we are looking for in our research. So a few potential respondents are contacted first and then ask them to suggest the other respondents. Respondents identify the additional people to be included in the sample. So the respondents we contacted first will identify and suggest the additional people to be included. For example, the population of a survey is stock market investors and the list of stock market investors are not readily available. Here the researcher find out one investor and asked him to reveal the name of other stock market investors he knows. Next topic: types of snowball sampling. Snowball sampling may be of three types. First one, linear snowball sampling. Here each respondent refers only one other respondent. That means one respondent is asked to suggest only one other respondent. We will approach the other respondent, then ask him to suggest one other respondent and so on. Then second one is exponential or non-discriminative snowball sampling. Each respondent refers multiple respondents and each referral gives some more. That means each respondent is asked to suggest two or more respondents and all these respondents will be included in our sample. And the third one is exponential discriminative snowball sampling. Each respondent refers multiple respondents, but only one is chosen as sample. That means each respondent will suggest two or more respondents, but we will select only one suggested respondent as our sample. Then advantages of snowball sampling. First one, helps to identify small, hard to reach population, useful in qualitative research. Disadvantages, there are chances of bias. Then limited generalizability. That means the findings of the study cannot be applied in another situations. The last important method of non-probability sampling is consecutive sampling or total enumerative sampling. It is very similar to convenience sampling but is different from convenience sampling. It is a sampling technique in which every items meeting a specific criteria of inclusion is selected until the required sample size is achieved. So a specific criteria of inclusion will be determined well in advance, and every item which meet that specific criteria of inclusion is selected until the required sample size is achieved. An inclusion criteria is fixed first, and the items included in the criteria are selected as sample until the required sample size is achieved or the survey period is over. It is considered as best of all non-probability sampling methods. An example of consecutive sampling. A car manufacturing company sent an executive to a mall to collect information about the buying preferences of people. Executive distribute leaflets to the people walking in the mall and request to answer some questions. Only those who have interested in buying a car may ready to respond. Out of these respondents, only those who have an intention to buy the car will be selected as sample. So here the criteria of inclusion is to select data from those who have an intention to buy the car. Then the leaflets are distributed to every people, but only those who have interested in buying a car may ready to respond. Out of these respondents, only those who have an intention to buy the car immediately will be selected as sample. Let me summarize the sampling methods. The methods of sampling may be classified into probability sampling and non-probability sampling. Probability sampling may be further divided into unrestricted sampling and restricted sampling. Unrestricted sampling consists of simple random sampling, which includes lottery method and table of random numbers. Then restricted sampling includes stratified sampling, systematic sampling, cluster sampling, multi-stage sampling, multi-phase sampling, etc. In this module, I have explained what is non-probability or non-random sampling and what are the methods of non-probability sampling. Non-probability sampling consists of convenience sampling, purposive sampling, quota sampling, snowball sampling, and consecutive sampling. Thank you.